we'll proceed to take leaders' questions. Call on the leader of Sinn Féin, Deputy MaryLou McDonald, please.
We've seen some moments of chaos during the lifetime of your government, but I think yesterday was really a new peak. You say that the advice given to you by NPHET came as a bolt out of the blue. That advice, of course, being not to reopen indoor hospitality, and in addition, when hospitality would be reopened, to make it available to vaccinated persons only. You say that you were caught unawares by that. That's an extraordinary situation, Taoiseach, given that you head government, and it is therefore incumbent on you to put in place plans and contingency measures in light of the very real danger posed by the Delta variant. But you didn't do that. No, once again, you marched the hospitality sector to the top of the hill, only to march them back down again. And by way of addition, you now pursue a plan that gives zero consideration to our young people. Taoiseach, consider the situation of a 19-year-old or a 25-year-old or indeed a 30-year-old in Ireland this morning. Many of them have held the line, indeed hold the line on the front line, working in retail, working in our schools, working in our hospitals. Others have lost jobs. Many haven't seen a day's work in a year and a half. Others had their time at college, but they weren't on campus, they were in their bedrooms. And all have had their opportunities to travel severely curtailed, taken from them at that time of their lives when it is natural to wish to explore the world. Tóga gach rud ó daoine óige fógar leathéimhíd le linn an pandéim seo agus níl sé seo mai galore. But on top of all of the pandemic disruption, consider their prospects for an affordable or a secure home. Well, they can forget about that on your watch. If they're relying on the PUP because their job disappeared, well, that's going to be slashed. If they find themselves on job seekers, well, then the message to young people is that they are less deserving than people who are older than them. And now we find ourselves in the summer months after an extraordinary year, at a time when our young people deserve a break. And you know what, Taoiseach? It's perfectly legitimate for young people to want to socialise together, to meet up with their friends. They were told that they would have an outdoor summer and told to prepare for that, and they did. And yet they socialise outdoors, most behaving themselves perfectly well. A small element, not all young people, by the way, misbehave, and yet all are then treated as a nuisance and a threat and a problem, and they're told essentially to get off the streets and to wait for the pubs to reopen. And then yesterday, you tell them that yes, they can work in pubs and restaurants, they can serve their elders, but forget about a drink after work for themselves in the same establishment, or indeed a meal in the establishment next door. Taoiseach, you can't do that. I think the time has come to stop paying lip service to young people and to listen to them and to meet their needs. So I'm asking you to give young people a chance to benefit from the reopening of our society and to benefit from the very hard work that they have invested to protect everyone else in society. In other words, Taoiseach, I am asking you to treat young people fairly. And I think so far you've disregarded the very obvious solutions in this regard. We've talked about antigen testing for, it seems, forever, and yet your government stubbornly refuses to pursue widespread antigen testing. And people ask now, why is Ireland the last place in Europe where you can eat or drink indoors? Well, the answer is because elsewhere antigen testing is being used. We need to get our young people vaccinated. We need to make sure that those in the 60 to 69 age group get their second vaccine and that happens quickly. And yet we still have no clarity as to when the changes to the vaccine programme, which are woefully late in my opinion, when they will take effect. And you're only engaging now with the hospitality industry.
Time is up, Deputy,
it is
please.
truly a
Can
mess.
you
This must be
conclude?
sorted, Taoiseach, and you have to deliver now a plan of
Time is up,
action
Deputy,
that is
please.
fair to the hospitality industry, but also to the younger generation.
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
First of all, I would agree with your fundamental assertions, and I regret the fact that you have really, since this government has been formed, been so divisive in terms of your approach to COVID-19 and always have sought it now as an avenue to exploit for political gain. But my more important point is this. I think everybody in the House should first of all take on board that the Delta variant is a serious issue and a challenging one, and will be across Europe. And the advice from NEFIT is to that effect. Whether we like it or not, Delta is far more transmissible and creates risks. That is the essence of the advice that was presented to us by NEFIT, and of the modelling that was also presented to us, which was quite stark in terms of the case numbers, in terms of the hospitalisations, and in terms of deaths and ICU occupancy for August, September, and indeed for July. Now, I would ask you to take that on board, Deputy, and I would ask you to accept that. And I would also ask you, is it your view that we should have pressed ahead on the 5th of July with the opening of hospitality, given the warnings that we got and the projections that we got in relation to the impact of the Delta variant? Is it your view that we should have proceeded? I'd like you to ask that question, or answer that question openly and honestly, because it's a key point, because the government decision yesterday was to not proceed. That's the fundamental decision we took, was to delay proceeding on the 5th of July and to engage with the industry, the hospitality industry. And COVID has been devastating for the hospitality industry. I know that. It's been devastating for travel and tourism since the very beginning, not just here, but around the world. And it's been devastating for many societies in terms of the impact of COVID. I spoke yesterday with Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister from Scotland, and she used a very telling phrase. She said, Delta will rip through an unvaccinated population. All their eggs are in the vaccination basket. They are 60% fully vaccinated. And there is some hopeful signs that there may be a breaking of the link between case numbers and hospitalisations, but that is not certain yet, and that will take more monitoring. And I think that's, and I would also say, Deputy, you use the word chaos and the word mess gets mentioned. You know, if you look back over the last number of months, we have reopened society steadily, successfully, and effectively in terms of schools, childcare, sport for young people, and in terms of construction, and in terms of outdoor hospitality, and in terms of personal services, and in terms of retail. That's not chaotic. That hasn't been a mess. It's been steady, progressive, wise, and it has produced results. And the decision yesterday is to protect all of that. That's my only motivation. It is the only motivation of government, is to protect that and protect people, not divide people, not divide society. We want to protect society. And I do understand how difficult COVID has been for young people. I know that. It is in terms of their college life, in terms of work. That's why pandemic unemployment payment was brought in for students in the first instance. And I will say this much. I think the threshold that has been set in respect of vaccination for hospitality is a very high one. That will prove very challenging. But we want to engage with industry because we understand how difficult it has been for the sector. And we understand how difficult it has been for young people. And the decision by NIAC, government doesn't take decisions on the book in relation to immunisation strategy. The NIAC decision would help us to accelerate vaccination, and that's a good thing.
Deputy McDonald.
Taoiseach, the aggressive transmissibility of the Delta variant and the danger that that poses was not new to you yesterday. You have known about that for a considerable length of time, as has NEFIT. So how is it that we are at lastminute.com again, 11th hour decision making again, marching the sector up the hill, as I said, to march them back down again. And it is divisive, Taoiseach, to single out young people who do not have the opportunity to avail of vaccination, and to say to them, yes, you can work in this sector, but no, you cannot avail of this sector. That is wrong, and that is divisive. You've asked me what should happen. Yes, the sector should be reopened, and safely, and a clear plan for that set out. And we should have a government that is not announcing days beforehand that in fact that is not going to happen. So tell us, Taoiseach, when will young people be vaccinated? What's the timetable for that? What of antigen testing, PCR testing? How will you deploy these measures to ensure that when the sector is reopened, that everybody, including the young, who to an enormous extent run these services, that they can avail of them also? You answer that. You are, after all, the Taoiseach.
I asked you a question which you didn't answer. And the modelling from NPHET was new, stark, the scale of it, in terms of the number of cases they are predicting, through different scenarios, optimistic, central 1, central 2, and the pessimistic. But I asked you a straight question, Deputy, you didn't answer me. Should we have proceeded? Should we have ignored the modelling and the advice? I recall you at Christmas time. I recall what you said then, and subsequently. You were for massive suppression of the virus. You change every time. It's regrettable, because you seek to exploit it for political and electoral advantage. That seems to be your only motivation when it comes to COVID-19, and that is very, very regrettable. I'm asking you, if you were presented with that by NPHET in terms of the modelling, and you know, no one likes the message. I don't like the message.
No one,
nobody likes to be told. And there's an element here that, you know, let's turn on NPHET or let's turn on the modelling. You know, the modelling isn't something that we all welcome. It's difficult and challenging. I mean, the results of the modelling we don't welcome. And therefore, I think we did the right thing to pause and delay the reopening of hospitality in light of the stark advice. Surely we've learned something from the last year and a half in respect of this issue.
Time is up, please.
And in respect of how the pandemic can always, and never underestimate this pandemic.
Time is up, please.